Today, this is our third session, Tech Talks at Irembo. So today we're going to be talking about observability of web applications at scale. I hope that means something. By a raise of a hand, how many people here have maintained an application in production or dealt with an application when users are using it? Okay, welcome to, I see so many people haven't, so welcome to running the miserable life these people had to go through so you don't have to have the same life. So to talk about this topic, we had to choose the full set of people who can actually shed the light on what it means, especially in our setting in Rwanda. Here I have Frank. He's from QT. These guys, they deal with developing systems every day. So how do they ensure that you can monitor your system even before the system gets in production? How do they ensure that they develop that into their system? Next to him, we have Landry. He works here at Irembo.
Hi.
He's the one who makes sure that Irembo is always available. And when it is not, he's the one to be responsible. So if we see him on the road and the Irembo is down, know that, something has to be done. Next to him, we have Brice. He's from AOS. AOS, the biggest data center company in Rwanda. They host almost anything and everything in Rwanda. So welcome to all of you. We want to learn a lot from you. Combined here, they have over 30 years of experience doing this. So this is 30 years we want to save you so you never have to spend sleepless night. You don't have to carry your bag, going to lunch, to breakfast, even going to dates. I see so many of you are young, so please don't carry your bag going to dates because, Yeah, so let me start by asking this small question or asking these amazing panelists of ours if they can tell us what their company do and what observability means to them. I will start with you.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Odilo. Thank you so much for giving us time to discuss and also to learn from each other. So I'm from QT Global Software, and we are a Rwandan company, and we've been building software for the past 7 years. And we're supporting many government institutions and also private sector. And we think observability means monitoring your web application, all the different types of application you're having, and having the kind of understanding or visualizing all the angles of your application in terms of maybe performance, in terms of user friendliness. There are different things which we think you should be looking at to make sure that your application is successful on the mission it's having and also the objective that you want to achieve with the application. Yeah.
Thank you. Landry?
Okay. Thank you so much, Odilo. So I'm Landry. I'm working at Irembo. What is Irembo? Irembo is a tech Rwandan company who operate in Rwanda, and our goal is basically to build product that is going to be impacting people's life. And currently at Irembo, we have two main products. We have the Irembo Gov that most of us we know, which is basically the e-government online digital services that help the citizen to interact with all of the public services, and we have also Irembo Bay, which is our services, which is one-class payment services that help us now to basically, let's say, allow the citizen to pay. So at Irembo Observability, we can make it simple for us is how are you able to measure the system that you are building, how are you able to understand that he's deliver his purposes. So for us, observability is, I will just summarize it from here, and then later we'll deep dive.
Thank you, Brice.
Yeah, thanks, Odilo. My name is Brice Kayihura. I'm in charge of operations in AOS Datacenter. So AOS is a technology company that deals with IT services. My main role in AOS is to operate and run the national data center. So we offer various services, hosting, co-location, cloud, and others. So observability for AOS means be on top of things, meaning a critical infrastructure such as a data center cannot afford to be down because many people can depend on it. So observability, actually, there's a difference between observability and monitoring. Monitoring is the issue has happened, so you have to deal with it. That's what we call incident. But observability has something more like knowing ahead of time of an issue that might happen in the future. It's like, being a prophet to the IT infrastructure. So it's very critical that we are aware of an issue that is almost is on the way of happening. So that's how important observability is to any IT infrastructure.
Oh, perfect. So now, this is really interesting, the point you're telling, guys. The observability being those things you do, of course, to make you, is it God or prophet of God? I don't know. But then the other part of actually when something has happened, how do you deal with it, right? So right now you've had what they have to tell you or what their experiences in the industry. We're going to have this conversation in two parts. One, I'm going to be asking my own questions. I'm sorry, but that's the privilege. Then at the end, we also have purchased this session. So you guys feel free, if you have a question, note it down. You will have time to ask no question. Without further ado, let's get started. Now, let me start with the planning of observability of your web application, right? Because in the end, everything starts in planning. I want to put this question to all of you. My question is actually simple. How do you decide on which metrics or events you want to observe? I'm refraining from using the word monitor. So, how do you decide on those metrics and events, considering that there are so many constraints like resources, the time it will take you to actually develop the tools to help you monitor? So how do you decide on those metrics? But this time, we start with this.
Thank you, Odilo. So what's the criteria on which we base while choosing what to monitor and what not to monitor? First of all, a principle any IT infrastructure engineer or administrator should know: things will go wrong. It's just a matter of time. Okay. So what you need to do is to put yourself in the customer or user shoe, definitely he will use the system, right? There are set of functions or features that you put in place, right? So that the application runs or you serve the customer. So the monitoring or the observability you put in place has to mimic user experience. For instance, you have a web application. You need to know the response code that are being experienced by all users. Is it the 500? Is it the 400? That's bad news for the application administrator. You need to check the database. How fast do you serve queries? So you need to measure the time it takes for a query to run and to deliver to you results. So basically, you put yourself in the user's shoes. What will happen, whatever observability you do, it's like you're using the system yourself, right? That's the basis on which you lean on to choose. I'm going to look at this. I'm going to look at this. But because we also, as engineers, we know all the other features that we have to monitor underneath to be able to deliver the end product. First of all, customer-centric. You need to know how the customer feels. Second, you have to use the expertise to know what's required on the server. For instance, you need to check how the server I/O, the disk I/O is behaving. You need to check the connectivity, the speed. Is there a bottleneck anywhere? So you have to check all of this. There's two things: what the customer needs to have, and what you know as an engineer.
I see. So basically, you're saying these guys have to do a better job when they are planning their product.
Correct.
Okay. Now, actually, let's get to you. What do you should?
Yeah. So I think for the purpose of planning and also observing, like what are the things that you have to observe and then also about maybe say monitoring, even though it's just part of that.
Yeah.
And also maybe the metrics. I think you need to look to understand the global view or have the global understanding. And with the global understanding, I think you have to first categorize the different metrics, the categories. For example, you say I have to look at resources. For example, CPU, memory, disk, and all those kind of things. And then look at the maybe performance metrics and also capacity of the app, because this is also part of the planning. If you want to look at those things, then for example, maybe if you're looking at the response time, you're looking at the latency, and then you're also looking at maybe the average response time. But all those things are just part of the angle that you can see as performance metrics or the capacity of the system. This is very important for the planning. And then you can also look at the category of maybe, let's say, availability. So maybe to see how available is the application, how are you going to observe that the application is always available to serve the customer or the client. So those are things you have to look at, like the uptime, maybe error logs, those kind of things I think Brice was talking about. There are lots of things which you can look at. And then let's look at another perspective, which is about security. Also, it's very important. At least what are the things that you have to look at in terms of observing and making sure that the application or the product you're monitoring is also secure. And also, it's about the maybe user experience, I think Brice has talked about, but I think all those things are coming together for the same goal of user experience. So, and I think there are a lot of metrics which are there in terms of planning, And then if you look at versus the resources, so it doesn't mean that you have to look at all of them, because sometimes it requires a lot of resources. Maybe human resource, but also system resources. So it's very important to look at the type of application that you want to monitor to be able to do the proper planning. And then you know what are the key metrics that you have to look at. Yeah.
Yeah, interesting. So now, this was telling us, these guys have to do a better job. And now they have also telling us how what you do has to depend on your application, right? Depends totally on your application, your resources, and everything. Now, let me put to Landry, who has made the Irembo, a web application that is already at scale, handling a lot of traffic. Give us your opinion. What do you think, based on your experience?
So I will start by saying they have captured already most of the thing. They didn't. But I will just put it in another angle. So the way I saw it is, first of all, you are not doing observability to do observability. You are doing that because you have a purpose, right? And in terms of purpose is you are building your web application to deliver some value. So that is the key fundamental thing that you need to keep in mind, as they mentioned. And then now from there, you have other dimensions that you need to look at it. For where are you going to operate those customers? Where are they? Do you have any constraint on because of the kind of nature of data that you are going to manage on your platform? For example, in the use case of Irembo, we are not allowed to go on cloud with due to some regulation, right? So now with having already those kind also of information in mind, you can have now different perspective. Am I going to observe, like the tool that am I going to use? Those kind of elements can also influence your decision making. Now, if you say I'm going to, because of some constraint, I'm going to manage it on premises, then now that one already somehow reduces the kind of tool that you need to put in place. If you go also in terms of cloud, now you will now need to decide, do I have the technical skill internally where I want to, let's say, do I really want to spend my time on that? Do I have expertise internally to manage it? Or do I want to be able to say, let's say, no, this is not my core business. So let me look at is some tool or some company who are doing that. And then I just take the managed services and then they bring value for me. So for me, I will say, on top of what they mentioned, I have that point that I want to add. Now, in terms of application, when we are designing, I will say observability is maybe the way we are framing it, we only look at it in terms of web application, but it's not, for me, it's not only web application. By the definition of himself, observability, as I mentioned before, is a way for you to measure how are you understanding that the application that you are building is deliver his purposes. So by having that one in mind, what does that one mean? Now you will need now to ask yourself, how am I going when I'm building the application to be able to first make sure that those value, those promised value are delivered, right? And then now when you have those elements in mind, you will now start to deep dive internally in terms of my application himself. How am I going to capture those events, right? How am I going to be able to know that, okay, for example, I need to send an SMS because part of my delivery process of the promised value of the product, for me to do this, I have some specific action that need to be done. Now, those key actions who are come back also in terms of user-centric, you need to make sure that those elements are your driver, and then when you build your application, you onboard those elements on the design. So another point that you need also to look at is in terms of external or third party. We are in a world where you are not going to do everything, right? Wherever you are doing, you need also to make sure that you have dependency. Wherever you are, is it small, medium, or big, you have dependency. So to serve the purposes of your application, you need also to be intentional to identify those elements who are outside of your control and be able to identify how am I going to be able to detect them, right? When something goes wrong for that. And then, because if you are not very intentional on that, and then you are just focusing on the application that you are building, if those external third party now have an issues, right, you are not going to deliver the promised value of your application. So for me, I will say you need to be custom centric, yes, but you need also to look at both internally and externally. What are those key elements that I need to be able to achieve or to monitor to deliver the value or the promise of the application?
Interesting. So you say even if you become a prophet or become a god, you still have, some ingredients, maybe cause some friendly just that are not under your control.
Yeah.
That you still also have to monitor and ensure that they are okay with your system. Right? Okay. Let me ask another question. Now, I'm going to ask it to Frank. How do you use observability data to detect issues before they happen, or before they actually become something to handle, if I can put it out?
Yeah. So I think the way you can try to use data to detect the possible issues which can happen is just to look at the metrics, which I think we've been talking about. And how do we look at the metrics? We look at this by having ways to monitor using data that is coming. So this can be maybe from the logs, and then you can be having tools and also systems to visualize, and also to try to understand what's coming up, and also to look at the trends using data. So you can be having the trends, which I think can help you to properly understand that something is coming up. If the traffic, the requests are growing time to time, and they're not even going down, is something even to know that something is coming up as an issue.
I see that. So, maybe a follow-up question on that, how does that help you with the optimization of the system, operative maintenance? How does it help you when you do it?
Yeah, so it helps with the optimization because there are those systems. Maybe I can tell from a recent experience where we are going to deploy a system on site, and after deploying the system, we're having issues because we've done the performance testing before, and we've done a lot of preparations, but again, infrastructure was a problem. So after deploying and after making sure that the infrastructure is okay, everything is okay, and then it was kind of an upgrade, but a new system. Then we had an issue that was happening just randomly. Performance was just, being hit, all the resources were just going up, and then all the users are not able to access the system. The service is not available. And then after a short time again, the system is working. Then we check most of the things on it. So what we have to do is, first of all, is to visualize, and at least we try to put a tool. It was a Java Spring application. And then we had to put a tool to monitor on site, to install it, and then we try to monitor all the aspects of the application, just to pinpoint, because we spent like more than 2 days trying to figure out what's happening. One time it's working, and then we have left, they're saying, okay, now the system is at 100% CPU, everything. Then that's when we got to know that there is a process that was consuming like a CPU threads like to 100%. And it was just because of certain kind of a report, which was having bugs and all those kind of issues. So we have to come back again and solve this issue with a report that they were querying every time after visualizing and trying to get to know that it was just a single report that was causing all the issues. So without having this kind of tool just to be able to optimize and just to try to make sure that now the system is optimized and also performed to the expected levels. But that, I think that's the way we can go about optimization.
If you understand, guys, the life ahead is tough if you don't have a way to monitor observability. Just make sure it doesn't happen. We stay on coding it observability. Now, my next question is, so most of you, Landry said something about we are saying web applications, but it doesn't end on web, just the web application, right? He also goes to the infrastructure, the networking. Now, I want to understand. I'm starting with Brice.
Perfect.
What role does infrastructure and networking, analytics, observability, play in this whole thing? And if you can be kind to tell us also, how does it integrate with the application specific applications?
Okay. Here I'm going to say something that usually there's a fight between the infrastructure guys and the application guys.
That's why the system is not working.
It is true that majority of, not majority, but quite big amount of issues that happen to us, an application or a system, have the origin from the infrastructure. Because you can't do anything, you can't do nothing without the infrastructure. Because you need computing, you need storage, you need connectivity, you need security, all the underlying services to be able to offer your application. So that's how you plug in the responsibility of the infrastructure to the requirements of the application. The best thing would be to do sizing before you do any application development. If you want to serve 10 users, it's different from serving 10 million users. So while planning for your application, you should be mindful of the infrastructure that is offered to you. So there has to be a close collaboration between the infra team and the application team and the server team or a storage security. One of the best practices that are being used before you open an application into production. First of all, you have to do performance testing, like Frank has just mentioned, but also you should check it for security before it goes online, because as soon as you go online, that's it. You're a victim. You can be a victim or a champion. So those two best practices, you see how it would look because we do sizing, but it's not an exact science, right? You do forecasting. You say, if I've been using this much people, you have a certain trend, maybe in 1 month I'll have hit my threshold. You can have the threshold the first day, depending on how your users adopt your application. So it's very important to be mindful of the infrastructure you're going to deploy your application on. One of the benefits of cloud is that you don't care about that. You just care about your application. And the infra team underneath is the one to take care of whatever you ask of them is always available. So that's when the higher liability is on the infra team to look at the once again, the infra team has to look at the trend. Yes, it's not an exact science, but you have to add some common sense to see the trend. If your trend is growing, you should think of upgrading or expanding your computing, the storage, the security, the connectivity. Yeah.
Does that mean it's the infra job?
It's a joint effort.
Don't want to offend anyone. Brice, you had the perspective from both from the application specific and the infrastructure. Please tell us what you think.
Where to start is so big. So one thing.
Also, there's one that names is spin. So we are the context guys. And
Yeah.
at AOS, this guy spends a lot of nights there.
Yeah.
So good.
We're buddies. In trouble. Buddies in trouble.
So for me, I would say we have the both angle at Irembo. It's also something that, as an engineer, you are proud to have those kind of environment where you are going to have the 360 view from the infrastructure to application. So we have those both angles. And the way we are managing it is through instrumentation. So what I mean by instrumentation is basically we have on observability 3 main pillars. One of them is to say one of the best practice or common sense to do that is to say you cannot say your system is observable if that system is not able to produce event, right? And then in terms of event, we have 3 main categories. One of them is going to be log. Another one is going to be the metrics. And then the third one is going to be the traces. So for a Irembo perspective, we are using the 3. So I will just take some example. So when we have developers who want to ship their code, most of the time they have their timeline. They want to just go and then they want to make it work, right? But how do we, at the company at scale like Irembo, how do we make sure that those elements that has gone in production, we are able to know how is it behaving? And we are able now to take those information and then come back again on the process of development, iterate and solve that. So that one is going to be solving by the logging part. So at the Irembo, we have mechanism to be able to pull information from the application, and those information is going to be forwarded on a central repository, where now the developer, either if they are on either if they are still on development phases, or either if they are in production, they will be able to get those information to identify ahead of time, and sometime when it's not ahead, pull the information on the data to now use the engineering mindset to solve that. So that is the first part. The second part is about metrics. So in terms of metric, maybe I'm using those names, but I will take example. In terms of metric, here you can see it's like how many users do we have on the platform at a specific time. For example, when we are opening some services which require much more people on the platform than usual, how are we able to know if the resources, for example, that you mentioned in terms of infrastructure is going to be able to accommodate? So when you have the proper metric system, he's going to be able to tell you and use now those new technology based on the AI and tell you based on the resources that you have right now and the trend that I saw 2 or 3 or 1 month ago before, you will be able to manage this kind of traffic. So that is the part about metrics. You can see them in terms of response time. You can see them in terms of how the partner is able to respond. Do the API working? Do the database is available? And then now when those elements are not working as expected, you need now to trigger events to be able to alert. So that is the second part about the metrics. We still on the observability. And then the third one is about tracing. So at Irembo, because we are dealing with multiple stakeholders, we will need to be able to have the full end-to-end view from the time that the request happen up to the time that we process it. So that means we want to have the 360 view from the end user perspective our system and other external systems. So when you have a proper tracing system, it's going now to give you that visibility so that you will be able to know, am I performing well? And if I'm not performing well, which is the area that I need to get the information, right? Sometimes you might realize that maybe it's some query that they mentioned in terms of databases. Now you work with the subject master database expert to get it fixed. Sometimes you might realize that it is a third party. It can be a partner who is not responding quick. And because it's slow, it's impacted also that. So when you have those three main elements that you have as core of the culture of observability, normally you will be able to dodge all of those areas. So now the question that you mentioned later, which was how do we connect all of that? So where we have the infrastructure, we have the logging, all of that. So I mentioned initially that you need to know where you want to spend your energy. Do you want to do that by yourself, or do you have capability internally to do them, to build them? At Irembo, we are using the tool. We are using the both option. So we are using some managed services who has built those AI, who is giving us a single UI where the tracing, the events, and the metrics, we can get all of those information from a single places. But also we have some area of the architecture that we cannot rely on due to Rwanda data low privacy. We cannot push them on cloud. So now there we need to empower the engineer internally to be very intentional to go and see those open sources product and then try to, get used to that. So mention maybe some tool like Grafana, Prometheus, those kind of things. And then from there now we are able now to have both internally, those elements who cannot go on cloud, we have visibility for that. And then the element that does not have critical data, we use those managed services to now use to have those trace detection.
Yeah, Mark.
Perfect. I mean, I guess if you have that, there's no more it's the system being down, is but now you know exactly messed up.
Yes.
Or you put it in other words, you know how to fire.
Okay. Okay, so maybe I will say for that, you need also to be intentional on what are you get alerts for, right?
Yes.
So that area that you made, the reason why I was like that is because I was like, you need to find a balance on how you manage your alerting. All of those two, right? How are you going to make sure that you're not going to do over alerting?
Yes.
How are you going now also to make sure that the right alert you are setting there? And then sometime you might realize that, on the design phases, we forgot this, right? And then now, that is why it's a loop. So it's a continuous process.
Well, and I think please hold that because I have some interesting questions to ask you about that.
Okay.
There's something you mentioned about using AI to help people detect, right? So this is where now we talk about how ChatGPT is going to detect down jobs and everything is. Let me ask this to Fran. How are you leveraging AI when you putting some for your these deals that you actually deliver to customers everything, considering it's the big thing now. If you don't spend the AI is in there, your thing doesn't work.
Yeah. So I think AI is very important nowadays. It's a buzzword. It's everywhere, and I think it's very important to also embrace the new trends in the technology. And what I think is that sometimes it's very important to have AI based analytics and also kind of machine learning, all those kind of things. Though sometimes you don't have to build this, but it's very good also to understand what advantage do they bring, which is kind of different from the other, traditional tools we've been using. So it's also even a criterion, even to know how do you choose a tool that is going to also help you and also take the observability to another level. So for me, what I think is that the importance of this is about pattern analysis. So it's just about the metrics, the traces, and the events which are happening within the system, how you're collecting them, and then you can have different AI models that can help you to detect anomalies and also detect things which you cannot see if you're just trying to monitor the application manually or just looking at the graphs. So I think the pattern analysis is very important, and I think that's the value that the AI is bringing. And I think another aspect is about I can say it's about the metrics, because as we're having applications, we're having new frameworks coming up. We're having so many languages, and we're also having the different ways of developing applications. So for example, people nowadays are going into the low-code, no-code platforms. So you simplify the work for the developer, but again, you're adding another layer of complexity to the people who are monitoring or managing this infrastructure and also the application. So the work is becoming easier for the developers, and then it's also becoming hard for this infrastructure manager, the DevOps people, to be able to pinpoint and find out the issues which are there. And I think that's why, as the trend is going with the tools we are using to develop software and applications, it's also very important for these monitoring applications. Also, you go to that perspective where you're able to monitor thousands of metrics. Because if you're collecting logs, you're looking at specific metrics which you have planned ahead, you have planned before. But there are those things which we cannot see if we don't apply like machine learning modules or artificial intelligence. So it's very important to have this as part of the observability, and also to be able to trace even the metrics. So it means you're feeding it data, and then it will be learning the patterns that you can also try to detect that you have not even thought about. So you can throw thousands of metrics to this kind of models, and then you can also try to detect. So I think it's very important also to consider AI in terms of monitoring and also observability of the application, just to get those patterns and also the trends. So it's very important that you have to go with this. And then if you are a developer or a DevOps engineer, it's very important that you do the assessment with the tools you're going to use, because sometimes you don't have to reinvent the wheel, that you have to go and build this kind of thing. But sometimes in rare cases, for special occasion, you might have to write some models to do some work or to try to detect some of the trends that you want to see from the events, from the logs and the different metrics from the system.
Interesting. I think that the question, I mean, if not asking this question yourself, I'm sorry, I have to ask, is big AI better than human with this kind of job?
Of course.
Should this be my next career? That's the matter I'm asking. Is it safe?
Yes, but I think we can say that it's also better than human, because humans sometimes they're putting also effort and also trying to maybe it depends with the kind of analytics you're doing. If it's a kind of supervised, then you're also training the model. So you need input from the human being to be able to build a model, which are kind of trained, and they know how they can work after getting the training. And also you have the unsupervised. That's another part which I think. But human intervention is very important. I don't think we are going to cut off dinosaur success.
I think I do. Still not quite No. My next question was to guys, but I also want to ask it to Landry. Since you guys have so many, even they did have so many partners, I want to ask you to use the ones that have that are actually now have so many systems production. Is it? Or you also do? You have so many systems in production? And
yes, we have, but
My question is now, so what is your process physically and the probability side of the shows based on the severity and impact? And how do you communicate to stakeholders? And James, let us start there.
Yeah. We're speaking of observability monitoring, but there's a reason to that. The reason is to avoid as much as we can having issues, having incidents. Initially, when you're working with the third party or any other stakeholder, you should agree on a service level that is expected from your application. Meaning, if I want to host or launch my application, I should align with the infrastructure team, with even the customer. You should agree what are the satisfaction I can offer them, right? So that in case of an issue, first of all, you should have a mechanism, the most automated mechanism to be able to communicate anything that is wrong. I was talking to Landry a moment ago. Irembo has a very, very good platform whereby you can get status of the system at any time. Should there be any issue, any user can know when there's an issue. So communication, first of all, you should communicate with the user because they're expecting something from you. But also you should escalate as much as possible. If it means if you have troubleshoot result as soon as possible, it will be easier for you to communicate to either third party, the people who are providing you service in terms of infrastructure, in terms of security, in terms of connectivity, and to be able to communicate to the customer. You should put in place, there's some monitoring tool whereby anytime there's an issue or a small problem in the infrastructure, that alert is converted into an incident, so that people cannot ignore that the issue is there. Until it's fixed, it's still considered an incident. And that incident requires a root cause analysis to be able to produce a knowledge base, something that can help you avoid that issue in the future. So, detecting as soon as possible, communicating as soon as possible to all the stakeholders, and build a knowledge base to be able to help you avoid similar issues from happening.
Thank you, Rob. That's what to say.
I'm just going to add on top of that. So for me, I think it's fall on the processes and team structure, right? So what do I mean by that is you need, by default, even when you are going to launch your product, you need to keep in mind that things are going to go wrong, right? So you don't have any platform which is going to be 100%, right? Even yesterday, we have one tool that we are using who never goes down, and it's managed services, but it went down for some minute. So you need to acknowledge that. Now, so I think even if it goes down, right? And then now, by having that one in mind, the question will be now, how do you organize yourself? How do you organize the team? How do you communicate also internally and externally to manage that? So I think it's going to fall under the process. So you need to define yourself. For example, you mentioned about the SLA. When those SLA are, for example, I don't know, before we hit already the 30 minute, as an example, within those timelines, if we are maybe less than 10, what do you do, right? You need to be very specific on that. And then you need also to make sure that the way your team is operating and is working is in somehow is linked to that processes. So what I mean by that is, for instance, if you have an incident, for a company like Irembo, you have the operational team, you have the business team. So for people who are in terms of operational, how do you organize them in a way that they are going to, even when they're still under investigating, you have maybe in terms of structure, a person is going to be fully accountable for communication while others doing the investigation. That is maybe one thing that you need to have. And also, how do you make sure that now also when you want to communicate externally, what are the processes that you have in place? So I think for me, it's just fall under processes and team structure. So with that now, you will find a way to navigate around.
Actually, you're touching the system part. We are now is see the gas happen, right? Yes, something happened. Now, how do you communicate? How do you manage? I want to understand now, Andrew.
Okay.
By the way, I'm going to ask you how the patient.
Fine.
Let's forget about this week we express it.
Okay, go ahead.
So, how do you balance the need now to actually resolve the question, the incident, right? With finding the root cause of the problem, considering, sometimes you move faster than someone is like, hey, can we restart the server and see? By the time you restart, the logs are gone, everything is gone now, you can't know how, how the issue happened in the first place. So how do you balance that? And I want to understand if you have any tools in place to help you with that.
Before we go on the tool, I would say in terms of principle, you have Google has a lot of a book about high reliability engineering. So whatever I'm going to say, and I fall under those books. So we are not reinventing the wheel. So one of the principles when you have an incident is first the culture. In terms of blameless culture, you need to make sure that those people, when you are working, they need to be comfortable to say the truth and don't be trying to hide things just because they are going to say, oh, I did not do my job well. I want to first put that one. Then when you have that one in mind, I think the other thing is the operation, the principle. So I will say, repeat it again. Repeat it again. I'm still processing.
Trying to put the first like, yes, down. Okay, to summarize, now you have a need to respond fast.
Yeah.
You also have to find the root cause to it as it happened again.
Yes.
So how do you manage the two?
Okay, fine. So now it comes back. So I will say first principle when you have an incident, if you have properly used the right tool on the beginning, normally even if you take an action to restart, you will be able to have historic data where you can go back.
Yes.
Right? So having that mind already, or which tool am I going to be able to choose, where even if I want to react faster to get the things done and the services being available, that also is something that you need to keep in mind on your design principle. So for example, exactly. So for example, we are using Greylock, right? We have EFK. Now with that, if we have an incident and then we realize that, for example, alert happened, is, I don't know, database maybe is down, right? If we have already received the alert and then we are sure that this database is down, to keep serving the services, first action or first principle is going to be to say, please get back the services first and communicate. People start to continue operating. And then when that one is finished, now you have a concept of postmortem or other session where you can now cross-join all of the team. It can be, I don't know, your developer who is in charge of the support, your DevOps, your security, your database expert, where they go together now on a room, a safe and peaceful room, and then now they use those data, right, to basically now identify what really happened, and then what is the thing that we did not do well, and how are we going to make sure that this never happened, or if it's happened, what is the process or the strategy or the playbook we can put in place to be able to in a short time resolve it? So that is the answer I can provide about it.
Do you guys get it?
Yeah.
Or should I come? Because everything he said, I think I will have to go, like, it is exactly how he said it. So guys, basically, my understanding and how in the deciding from the process or the planning process, make sure that you think of that. Right? You have a tool, have a mechanism, menu, anything. Also something else, please read the bold books about it outside, especially those from my book. And I'm telling you, it's like 100 of them. So, yeah, let me ask my next question to Frank. So he just mentioned something about having a playbook base resolve in issues that they happen. I want to understand from you, what role does automation play in incident response? And I want to also, this question is hard matter. Since actually, I'm not going to apologize. And I'm good. The question is, so how does the automation of incident response help you? And how do you balance the human intervention? Right? How do you balance that with the human intervention from actually getting the answer you need or getting the response you need with efficiency? Hard.
Yeah, I think it's not a simple one. There's a lot.
That is work.
Yeah, so I think automation is very important. Yeah, because efficiency and also speed, but it's not always the answer to have automation because not everything can be automated. But I think please talk about automating this process of having the instance, also the report, and then you have a ticket, and then you have people working on that. But also there's this kind of automation which I think it can be kind of a response, the way you design the infrastructure, to make sure that it can be able to respond to such kind of things on different layers. Because I think we have reliability, but we have to learn also to get solutions, and I think a lot of solutions can be done by automation, by having a way to maybe rerouting the traffic. If you have the backup systems and all this thing, it's not always the case for all the systems, but wherever possible, having this kind of automation, and also from the network layer, also having the kind of redundancy. I think these are things AOS is doing a lot because of the big infrastructure they're having. If you have this kind of devices on the network layer, and where you can be able to have automatic switching, and then you have automation of, for example, of maybe services. You're having a problem today, and then maybe you have some other resources where you can have a way the system can, maybe let's talk about DevOps, where you can have maybe the system can be able to spin up maybe the containers, maybe to handle the traffic which is growing, but of course you have the alert that something is wrong. So if you can have the way to automate the process, it's about performance. And then you have set up your infrastructure in such a way that you can horizontally scale, and then you have maybe servers, the host, which you can add, and then you have the automation that the service can also try to scale without even having to first stop the services, because always you have to go into the restart. This is something which happens to many tech people. Whenever the services are hanging, restart. The quick thing is just restarting.
Yes.
That's magic. So that's the magic, meaning that it just works. But after some time again, you're having the issue. So I think it's very important to have a way to have automation in terms of response, and also automation in terms of maybe handling the issue that you are facing currently. And also, again, you have to balance with the human intervention, because you want automation for the speed and efficiency, but again, there are those things that automation cannot do. So still you need human intervention, which I think is also very important. Maybe also to follow the procedure and the principles or things that you have to do. So these are things that it's a culture which I think that even the tech team has to learn. Like what do you have to do as Devo before restarting the systems? What are the procedures that you have to take? This has to be very clear, and it's a session that you should be giving to the engineer, just to make sure that they also understand how they should go about approaching the incident that is happening or the issue. Instead of just going to restart and then the magic happens, at least you go to the communication, and also you do the planning, which is also very important based on the system design. And maybe even talking to the developers, because you might think that after restarting you can recover. For example, if you're having transactions and then you're not having a way to balance all this, then all the transactions are gone. So therefore, people have to understand the nature of the application so that they know what will be the procedures and what will be the effect in case I have to restart right now. So this is very important, that you have to go pragmatic with the steps that you have to take in case of the incident, what you have to automate, but other things have to go with the principle, where people have to understand the principles of approaching the agent.
Yeah. Again, our jobs are still safe. First, IT is saying how's that frameworks or the list of procedures, what you need to do. And I believe so many people have big instances where you're not thinking, the system is down, and the next person to code, the only person who hasn't coded in the country is the president, and have to invite everyone. So make sure the planning are good. So my next question, which should be the last events are we looking at? Let me ask my question for Brice. It tells us what are the best practices post-incident analysis and ensuring that it never happens again.
Yeah. So, unfortunately, incidents happen. But the most important is to learn from the incident and avoid a new occurrence of the same issue. The first step would be to collect all evidence, anything that helps you understand exactly what happened. Because if you don't understand what happened, you will not be able to solve an issue. Something they mentioned about restarting, right? We love restarting services. But in ITIL terms, there's a difference between an incident and a problem, right? An incident is something bad that happened, but a problem, yes, the incident happened and you don't know yet what caused it. Of course, for the sake of having the service going up, I would suggest continue restarting the services. But the problem is still there because we haven't understood yet what caused the incident. So collecting evidence, anything that can point you to the cause, the issue. You're hunting for the problem in the logs, in the monitoring, in anything that you can find, put your hands on. If, like I said earlier, you should, as much as possible, trigger record of an incident. When you record an incident, you don't have all the evidence that you need. You just know this happened. But that's very key for you to follow up until the issue or the problem is closed. Of course, you have to have transparency within the team, as Landry said. You have to put people at ease so that they tell you everything that happened, or you can even put, because in an infrastructure like that, you always have errors. One of the reasons why we want to rely more and more on AI is to remove the error factor from the picture. Another best practice is to be able to detect anything, because majority of incidents, are caused by a change in the system. So you should have in place a change management system to be able to track whatever was done in the infrastructure or on the application. So it needs to be documented. Anything that needs to be changed needs to be documented. That's number one. Number two, in case it has not been documented, you should be able to have a log of an user activity or human being activity, so that you can trace and see, is it a culture problem or it's an infrastructure problem? So it will help you build in, if you have to enforce on the policy side or on the behavior side, that's where your focus will be. Or if it's a system problem, you'll be able to focus on a fix on the infrastructure level. So collecting evidence, understanding the issue happened, collecting logs and changes, right? And step number 3, you have to have at multiple levels you have to involve your team to be part of the solution. Let the engineer at all levels suggest what can be done, because if they suggest, they will own the fix, or they will own the availability, the better availability. So you join the team together, you brainstorm, this should have been done, this should have been done. So that if that is documented, next time it happens, first of all, you should have a mechanism to avoid it. But if a similar issue happens, you have your knowledge base and your team can know what to do as quick as possible. Yeah.
Interested. So are you saying you should work for FBI? So that the task you putting in is a complicated one.
Yeah.
Putting everyone at this when you even you yourself, you're in panic. And,
yes.
Now this is where my privilege stand, but I still hold them. They didn't keep up privilege, so still the king. Now let's open the floor. If you have any question, you still don't see yourself that your job is safe, you can ask, let's how about it. I think someone that you've addressed your name and ask this question. We haven't had it right. Panel. Why he's getting it, so don't get, there's something there, some point.
Okay, good. I'm called Jean-Claude Medisha, a software engineer at Dapas, and just a quick one goes straight to the one in charge of operation at EOS. So it is in terms of incidents. Let's say, for example, as a developer on my side, maybe sometimes, sorry to say this way, shit happens. I might be, in terms of monitoring, in terms of the tool, I may be checking that Datadog or Grafana or whatever. I can see nothing really going bad happens. So, for example, last month, I think, on Azure, we are having an issue like some servers in East and Western Europe, they were doing some maintenance and they were down. So in terms of tooling there over this year, I was like, what are really the tooling? Aside from the documentation, all those procedures, could you please give us your take on in terms of tooling? Like, what are the tooling? Because we want to understand that. Because sometimes you say the container that keeps on starting things. You may have a policy to play around with that, but really, I want to take in terms of as someone who's in charge of operation over there. So yeah, what do you think? Thanks, man.
Yeah, very interesting question. Actually, yeah, in monitoring, you mentioned something about the data center doing some work and so on and so forth. I agree that sometimes you will not have visibility of what's going on because you have a limitation to, because you don't own the entire infrastructure. You just focus on having your application running. One of the duty of your service provider is to give you visibility. Yeah, he owes you visibility so that you're not troubled fighting with your code while the problem is on another layer, right? So you mentioned about, you're asking about tools. Just a rule of thumb, follow the whatever you can cover, follow all the layers of OSI model. Of course, in your case, you start with the application layer. You want to make sure your response, your database query time, your response code of the web server, and so on and so forth. You have to check that. But also, if you can have access to another layer, actually, tools are there, but you need to choose what you want according to what you want to see. If you have more control on the server level, you want to see the logs, the system logs, the metrics of usage of the computing, the storage, and so on and so forth. If you can have another layer of visibility, you can even go as far as the physical environment and the physical hardware to know how the temperature is. You need to know how where you're operating from, how the temperature of, because this can degrade your service as well. Yeah. So at each layer, wherever you have control, you should, as much as possible, cover visibility. There's something Landry said. It's good to be thorough in monitoring it, seeing any tiny bit of things, but sometimes too much alerts kill alerting as well. So you want to focus and say, these are my critical applications, I need to be thorough. But for other systems that are not that critical, reduce as much as possible the alerting you get from them. Because if they get your attention, if the non-critical application get your attention, you will not have attention to attend to the most critical ones. So at each layer, cover as much as you can, but also make sure you want to listen what is worth it. Yes.
Maybe I will.
Yes, please. Yes.
Okay, it's just something common. I just wanted to contribute. So I think there's something that you need also to consider, to look at the application specific components, and then you look at the specialized tools. Because there are those tools where you can, like, you're talking about Datadog and all these kind of tools, where you can see and upload a lot of information, but there are those tools which are specialized depending on the component that you build the system with, be the programming language. I can give you an example, like that issue we had that we're trying to monitor and see the things. So for the Java application, we did this, I don't know if you've ever tried this, it's called Grow Root. Yeah, so it's specific for Java alone, looking at all the things about garbage collection, all these things about Java.
APM.
And then after the processes which are running, the functions which are being called, then it's like you're digging deep into the issue to be able to identify after having these kind of general tools, not giving you the insight that you want. So sometimes you have to go with the approach of even going to the tools which are specialized to certain programming language and certain components. or even the frameworks you're using to build the application. Yeah, this is I just wanted to add.
Okay. So I have, I share and I don't share at the same time. I don't know how to say it. So for me, I will say, I will come back again on the purpose of your application. Are you on managed services or you want to be building by yourself? And maybe another thing that I will challenge is, why do we want to have every single tool who is just doing something? What about thinking to have some tool who can help you to harmonize all of the things in one place?
Correct.
What is it going to enable you? It's going to reduce silo. You are going to see things in terms of developer, right? Now, let's say you have a database expert or a security guy who want also to have things. If you continue to only work in terms of silo, you are going to have your security guy who is going to have another specialized tool. And then the time that you are going to take to identify or solve something, you're taking too much. So for me, I will say, first principle will be think in terms of centralization. If you have a tool who can help you to solve not only your problem, start with that. And now, when you keep that one now in mind, another thing will be, do I want to go on managed services? You mentioned that you are having some issues for your use cases. Was Azure, right? So now, I don't know for Azure specifically, but you have, for example, tools in Google like Stackdriver. You have on Amazon services like CloudWatch. You have X-Ray. You have a lot of tools like that. They even have the managed services for those open sources. So they can provide you, for example, the managed services or Grafana, the managed services for Prometheus. So I think the thing that I see who is link of that is, as much start to ask question who is not only limited to the problem that you want to fix. What I mean by that is, yes, you want to have, for example, garbage collection, right? Let's say now next time you have, I don't know, you want to know, you start to do IoT, and then your IoT need to forward information to that tool. When I do the design, or when I plan it, did I put those elements also in mind? Or am I going to switch over tool just because I did the buy decision at the beginning? So I would rather suggest or advise, or suggest, and I would say like that you keep centralizing tool as first principle, and then you go to the specializing only if it is like you have tested, it's not working, and then you go further for that. The reason for that is agility, and make sure that you as a developer, you are going to have other subject master expert. He can be a security guy. He can be another expert who is going to help you to do that. Right, so that is my takeaway about that.
No.
Okay. Now it's the truth. It is the truth. Thank you. My name is Jonas. I'm a business analyst at QT. So I want to ask the panel, I'm looking at the worst case scenario.
Oh, it's good.
We are talking
good.
about the infrastructure, applications, and also the monitoring tools. The worst case scenario, this is software monitoring another software. So, so if everything goes down, so let's say monitoring tools and software goes down, so is there any other alternative that you guys can come up with rather than starting everything?
That's a good question, because sometimes you have an incident whereby even your monitoring is down. And so it's like cutting the branch on which you're sitting, so you lose everything. So best practice, it's very, very important to enforce high availability even on the monitoring. There's some solutions that allow you to build a cluster that can work. Let's say, for instance, if the incident is targeting one site, you can build a cluster that spans across multiple sites. In that case, you will still have someone on a remote site to be able to give you what's going on in the data center. And it's always good to have monitoring from inside and monitoring from outside. Very important. There's some things you cannot detect from inside, but someone who's outside might be able to say, but there's a problem. So sometimes the user have bad experience, but we are not able to capture that on time. So if you have an external, something that is not dependent on your infrastructure, that can help give you a better visibility of what's going on in your infrastructure. But I agree with you. We have to take care as well of the monitoring system. Yeah.
Maybe last comment for that I will add is observability is like software. It's just, by the way, it's a software. It's just doing a specific function. So as any software, when you think in terms of scalability, you need to take all of those measures that we have on software already, like how I mentioned about high availability, the scaling purposes, also long-term strategy when you are going to have more data, how you're going to manage, what is your disaster recovery strategy. So it's not because we are focusing on observability that those principles of engineering, we are going to, let's say, forget about that. So they're still applicable also when you are designing observability solution, who's going to help you ask it. Yeah.
Check out the day. Yeah, so I think they'll try to respond to most of these questions, but I think the most important thing is just to have the kind of monitor which is observability, which is kind of outside. So this is very important. Yeah. So if you're having the backups in different maybe locations, but also you're using maybe a managed service or the external service, I think it's also very important. And I think that can also respond to the worst case event.
It's going, try not to put
and eggs in one basket. Exactly.
Right.
Yeah. True.
Okay. Okay.
Take that one. Thank you. Well, my name is Mastel, and I'm a soon-to-be graduate from Carnegie Mellon, and majoring in applied machine learning. So my question is to Landry, and you can just answer it in the spirit of sharing and not sharing. It's okay. I'm going to get a bit specific. So looking at one of Irembo services, which is the application for the driving license, which is like a service that has had issues like over and over again. And so in the spirit of like leveraging metrics in order to anticipate issues, I'm wondering like how are you leveraging those metrics before that you do it differently now, that to ensure that the service is more stable and the users can actually have access to it for a longer period of time. This is considering that the issue was really on the metric side. Thank you.
Interesting. Hard question. Okay. Okay. So the answer I will say, you mentioned the key important things. First of all, we start by it's a continuous improvement process, right?
Okay.
So it is not like what we have done 2 or 3 days or 1 week ago. We are sure that it's going to be, it's finished. It's never end. So after I said it, I would say we leverage data and we leverage also load testing. So basically, yes, you need to have those data in terms of metric. Oh, if you are not performing well. But having those data is just an insight. It's just an input to do other engineering work. So I will say you touch some area or where we are keep improving. And I think compared to a few time with ago, we are also in kind of better. But what do we do? So what we have done basically was to first acknowledge that we are not doing well. with that culture of blameless. And then after we do that, now we identify what was the root causes, right? So in terms of root causes, we might realize that, it is that one databases when we are receiving, maybe on normal day, we have 2,000 of users. Our infrastructure is not sized to handle more than, let's say, 10 times that. So now imagine a scenario where now you have an infrastructure who has been working somehow with some number and then suddenly a spike arrives. It's maybe 10 times that. So you need now to use those insights to ask questions and how you are processing and how you're operating. So what we are doing basically is to make sure that even on the QA, quality assurance, that we are trying to progressively empower more load testing on the environment, test them, not using only the data, number of users that we have currently, but also do a kind of an estimate, extrapolation, right? And then based on that, we feel that moving forward, we are going to be every day much more better than we were in the past.
Are you satisfied?
And yeah.
This is our last question. So someone back behind me. This is our last question. I hope we will stick around. You guys can ask any question you want to them. By the way, we'll have some snaps. Some people here will help us with a campus tour. If you need to ask anything, if you want to see anything, reach out to them. These guys are wearing. I was going to say the t-shirts will not open, but I didn't let some of you go with the table look so they brought t-shirts people.
Okay.
Let's have our last t-shirts then.
Yeah, thank you so much. My name is Ememne Zero. I'm a machine learning engineer. So allow me to first touch on the question that Odilo asked, if AI is better than human. So for me, I believe that someone who's using AI is better than someone who's not using it. Yeah, so my question is, there is another question that Odilo asked to Frank, if they are leveraging AI. So his answer was somehow diplomatic. Yeah, she just said AI can be used to do this and that to monitor, but he didn't explicitly say if they are using it, the tools that they are using, and the benefits that it's bringing. So let me re-ask again the question. Are you leveraging AI? If yes, what impact is it bringing? Yeah, thanks so much.
Yeah, thank you. So I think the question is about using it. And I think the way I can respond to this is that using this with a different tool, but with the tools we are having so far, to be honest, it's something we are exploring to look at the tools which are that level, giving also the AI capabilities. So we are not yet there using the AI, but we are exploring that. Yeah, for the observability and monitoring. Yes. So actually, I try to respond to tell you what we are doing and how are we evaluating the existing tools to make sure that we are leveraging on that and we're not reinventing the wheel, because people have been building models to do this observability and also the monitoring. Yeah, so I think, I don't know if this responds to our question.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's right. I'm ready to say, and then we are out of bed.
One last. Okay.
One last question. Yes, someone there will I want to share my. Thank you very much. I'll not different than that. Why did you hire them? Wish.
I'd heard that people are hungry. So my name is Ivan, and I'm a lead software engineer for Uganda Trust Bank. I might be lightly steering away from the main focus, but I would like to ask Brice, what are your thoughts on in this era of cloud serverless and colocation? What are your thoughts of the relevancy of infrastructure engineers or infra leads and what you see the future might be in Rwanda in terms of technology and observability. Thank you very much.
Yeah, very, very good question from Ivan. Actually, observing the job market in Rwanda, I'm afraid we are short of DevOps and server and storage and network engineers. We have so many people in the area of software development. You know what? You don't need much infrastructure to start coding. Just need a laptop. But for DevOps or server network engineers, you need infrastructure, right? So we are in, the demand is growing because I was reading an article, Africa Data Centers is going to build a data center in Kigali. So I assume they're going to need so many people in DevOps, in security, in server, storage, the network engineers. So I would suggest to go that direction. Go that direction, because the job market is still open for those positions. Consider as if those positions are vacant and waiting for you to grab them. So if you would want to do something, go into DevOps. Yeah, because the demand is growing. Yeah. You're welcome.
Thank you so much. And then I'm so sorry, after in the interest of time and snacks, let me quote to you guys, just 1 minute each. Tell us what do you think companies should be considering while they are actually starting this journey? 1 minute.
Okay.
I'm starting.
Okay, thank you, Odilo. So my last word will be, we focus on people. You know, observability means you understand how a system should work properly, and you can detect when it's no longer working. So it means the people who are actually working in it have to know the baseline. How is a good system working? So that in case of an issue, they're trained to understand that there's a problem. If I improvise today to be a watchman, there's some skills I cannot have. Maybe I'll miss a thief jumping over the fence to come and steal things. Because I'm not experienced to understand, I should watch here, because normally at this time, no one is moving. So if people can understand what's normal, be trained to know what's normal, it's very easy for them to detect that something is going wrong. Yeah, that's it.
Great, good so much, Landry. It's so big to start. So for me, I will say, related to the topic from observability, I will say it's a critical topic that most of the time as a developer or a startup or a founder, we lose eyes on that, and we just discover when we are already too big, and then we need some time to redesign a lot of things to incorporate that. So my takeaway would be to say, as you are designing your software, you know that you are going to have your databases, you need to take into account security. Observability is another key area that you need to be very intentional about that. And because it's going to helping you to solve even issues that you even don't know that they exist, or also solving issues that exist in a very short time. That is for me the takeaway.
Yeah, for me, I think it's just about planning and budgeting. I think it's very important for the companies which are kind of just starting, because if you do proper planning, then you're just looking ahead. You know, how are you going to scale, and how are you going to get the budget, and then how do you optimize? Because it's very important that you can have all these tools, but again, you don't have the plan or the financing to get all the best ones. So it's better to do the planning and also do the optimization just to know what's very important depending on the type of application, and then what's the budget, planning ahead of time. I think those are the things that the companies can do well that they can use Chedjou.